What would you do if you met your biggest idol? For one young girl, this dream came true in the most unexpected way. Picture this: Johnny Depp, the Hollywood legend known for his iconic roles and mysterious charm, steps out of a fancy restaurant after a quiet evening. But what happened next was something no one saw coming. In this video, we'll take you through the heartwarming yet shocking encounter between Johnny Depp and a young fan that left everyone in tears. You'll learn how a simple moment outside a restaurant turned into a life-changing experience for both of them. And trust us, this story isn't just about fame. It's about the power of human connection and the impact one person can have on another. Welcome to Story Spot, where we bring you the most touching, surprising, and inspiring stories from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community of storytellers. Before we talk about the unforgettable moment that unfolded, let's set the scene. It was a crisp evening in the heart of a bustling city. The streets were alive with the hum of conversations, the glow of neon signs, and the occasional honk of a passing car. Nestled among the city's skyscrapers was one of the most luxurious restaurants in town, a place where the elite came to dine, away from the prying eyes of the world. The restaurant's grand entrance was adorned with soft golden lighting, and the faint sound of a piano melody drifted through the air. It was a kind of place where every detail screamed elegance, from the polished marble floors to the impeccably dressed staff. Inside, Johnny Depp sat at a corner table, enjoying a quiet dinner. Known for his iconic roles in films like Pirates of the Caribbean and Edward Scissorhands, Johnny has always been a man of mystery. But tonight, he wasn't the larger-than-life character we see on screen. He was just Johnny, calm, humble, and lost in his thoughts. Dressed in his signature bohemian style, with a scarf casually draped around his neck and a hat tilted slightly to one side, he looked every bit the artist he is. Those who've met him often say he has a quiet, approachable aura, and tonight was no different. He wasn't surrounded by an entourage or flashing cameras. It was just him, a plate of food, and the peace of the moment. As the evening wore on, Johnny finished his meal and prepared to leave. He stepped out of the restaurant, the cool night air brushing against his face. The city lights reflected in his sunglasses as he paused for a moment, taking in the scene around him. To anyone passing by, it might have seemed like just another night. But little did he know, something extraordinary was about to happen. Just a few feet away, standing nervously near the restaurant's entrance, was a young girl. She couldn't have been more than 12 or 13 years old. Her eyes were wide with a mix of excitement and fear, and her hands clutched something tightly, a small notebook, perhaps, or a letter. She had been waiting there for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a short while. Her heart raced as she watched Johnny step out. This was the moment she had been dreaming of, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she could go through with it. The girl's story was one of quiet resilience. She wasn't just a fan of Johnny Depp's movies. She was someone who had found solace in his work during some of the toughest moments of her life. Maybe it was a way his characters always seemed to embrace a uniqueness, or the way he brought depth and humanity to every role. Whatever it was, his art had become a source of comfort for her. And tonight, she had mustered the courage to tell him just that. But standing there, under the glow of the restaurant's lights, she felt small and unsure. What if he didn't have time for her? What if he brushed her off like so many other celebrities might? Her mind raced with doubts, but she held onto the item in her hands like a lifeline. It was her way of saying thank you, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her. As Johnny began to walk toward his car, he noticed the girl out of the corner of his eye. At first, he might have thought she was just another fan waiting for a photo or an autograph, but something about her demeanor caught his attention. She wasn't rushing toward him or waving frantically. She was just standing there, looking at him with a mix of hope and vulnerability. It was a look that spoke volumes, even without words. Johnny, being the kind of person who values genuine connections, decided to approach her. He walked over slowly, giving her a warm smile to put her at ease. The girl's heart skipped a beat as he came closer. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. But what she didn't know was that this encounter would change both of their lives in ways they never expected. The moment Johnny Depp noticed a young girl standing near the restaurant's entrance, time seemed to slow down. It wasn't the usual scene of fans clamoring for attention or paparazzi snapping photos. There was something different about her. She wasn't rushing toward him or shouting his name. Instead, She stood quietly, her eyes locked on him with a mix of awe and nervousness. Her hands clutched something tightly, a small notebook or a piece of paper, perhaps, and her body language screamed hesitation. She looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Johnny, ever the observant and empathetic soul, couldn't help but notice her. He had spent decades in the spotlight, meeting countless fans, but this felt different. There was an air of vulnerability about her that drew him in. Instead of heading straight to his car or brushing her off like some celebrities might, he paused. He adjusted his hat slightly, took a deep breath, and made a decision that would change the course of the evening. He walked toward her. The girl's heart raced as she saw him approaching. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Is this really happening? She thought. Is he actually coming over to me? She had rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times, but now that it was here, she felt completely unprepared. Her hands trembled as she gripped the item she was holding even tighter. She wanted to say so much, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. As Johnny got closer, he gave her a warm, reassuring smile. It wasn't the kind of smile you'd expect from a Hollywood superstar. It was genuine, kind, and disarming. He could sense her nervousness and wanted to put her at ease. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice calm and inviting. "Are you waiting for someone?" The girl's eyes widened. She couldn't believe he was actually talking to her. For a moment, she was speechless, her mind blank. But then, she managed to nod slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. I was waiting for you," she admitted, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Johnny's smile widened. He had heard similar words from fans before, but there was something about the way she said it that touched him. "Well, here I am," he replied, his tone light and playful. "What can I do for you?" The girl hesitated, her eyes darting to the ground before meeting his again. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was her chance, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. I just wanted to give you this," she said, holding out the item she had been clutching so tightly. It was a letter, neatly folded but slightly crumpled from her nervous grip. Johnny looked at the letter, then back at her. He could see the effort she had put into this moment, and it moved him. Without hesitation, he reached out and took the letter from her hands. "Thank you," he said sincerely, his eyes locking with hers. "I'll make sure to read it." But the girl wasn't done. She had more to say, and she knew this might be her only opportunity. I wanted to tell you how much your movies mean to me," she began, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. "You don't know this, but your work helped me through a really tough time." Johnny's expression softened. He had heard similar stories before, but he never took them for granted. He knew the power of art and how it could touch people's lives in ways that even the artist might not fully understand. "Tell me more," he encouraged, his voice gentle and encouraging. The girl took another deep breath, her courage building. "I was going through a really hard time at school," she explained. "I felt like I didn't belong, like I was different from everyone else. But then I watched your movies, and I don't know, it just made me feel like it was okay to be different, like I didn't have to fit in to be happy." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Johnny listened intently, his eyes never leaving Hayes. He could see the pain she had been through, but he could also see the strength it had given her. "You're right," he said after a moment. "You don't have to fit in. The world needs people who are different, who think outside the box. That's where the magic happens." The girl's eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to cry in front of her idol. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You have no idea how much your work means to me." Johnny was visibly moved. He had spent years in the industry, creating characters and telling stories, but moments like this reminded him why he did it. It wasn't about the fame or the accolades. It was about the impact he could have on people's lives. "Thank you," he replied, his voice filled with sincerity. "You have no idea how much this means to me." The girl smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that lit up her face. She had done it. She had told him how much he meant to her, and he had listened. It was more than she had ever hoped for. But the encounter wasn't over yet. Johnny, always one to go the extra mile, reached into his pocket and pulled out a pen. "Do you mind if I sign something for you?" he asked, his tone playful yet kind. The girl's eyes widened in surprise, and she quickly handed him her notebook. As he signed his name with a flourish, he added a small message, "Stay unique. Johnny." As Johnny Depp stood there, holding the letter the young girl had given him, he could sense there was more to her story. She wasn't just another fan sharing a quick compliment or asking for an autograph. There was a depth to her words, a rawness in her voice that hinted at something much deeper. He looked at her, his expression soft and encouraging, giving her the space to continue. The girl hesitated for a moment, her hands fidgeting nervously. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind so many times, but now that it was here, the words felt heavy on her tongue. She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and began to speak. "It's not just about your movies," she said, her voice trembling but determined. It's about what they meant to me when I needed them the most." Johnny's brow furrowed slightly, his curiosity piqued. He nodded gently, signaling for her to go on. He wasn't just listening, he was fully present, giving her his undivided attention. The girl swallowed hard, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "A few years ago, I was going through a really hard time," she confessed, her voice breaking slightly. "I was being bullied at school. Every day felt like a battle. I didn't have many friends, and I felt like I didn't belong anywhere." Her words hung in the air, heavy with pain and vulnerability. Johnny's expression shifted, his eyes filled with empathy. He had always been someone who championed the underdog, both in his roles and in real life, and hearing her story struck a chord deep within him. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine concern. The girl nodded, a single tear escaping down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, trying to stay composed. "It was really hard," she admitted. "I felt so alone. But then, I found your movies. I started watching them over and over again. There was something about the characters you played. They were different, just like me. They didn't fit in, but they didn't let that stop them. They embraced who they were, and it made me feel like I could too." Her voice cracked as she spoke, the weight of her emotions spilling out. Johnny's eyes softened even more, and he took a step closer, his presence warm and reassuring. "You're right," he said gently. "Being different isn't a weakness. It's a strength. It's what makes you unique, and the world needs people like you." The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She hadn't expected him to say something so profound, so personal. It was as if he understood exactly what she had been feeling all those years. "Your movies became my escape," she continued, her voice steadier now. "Whenever I felt like I couldn't handle things, I'd watch them, and for a little while, I'd forget about everything else. They gave me hope." Johnny listened intently, his heart aching for the pain she had endured. He had always believed in the power of storytelling, but hearing firsthand how his work had impacted someone's life was both humbling and deeply moving. "Thank you for sharing that with me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It means more than you know." The girl nodded, a small, shy smile breaking through her tears. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have no idea how much your work has helped me. It's like you gave me the courage to keep going, even when things felt impossible." Johnny's eyes glistened as he absorbed her words. He had spent decades in the spotlight, but moments like this reminded him of the true impact of his art. It wasn't about box office numbers or awards. It was about the lives he touched, the people he inspired. "You're stronger than you realize," he told her, his tone firm yet kind. "What you've been through, it's not easy. But look at you. You're standing here, sharing your story. That takes courage." The girl's smile widened, her cheeks flushing with a mix of pride and embarrassment. She had never thought of herself as courageous, but hearing those words from someone she admired so much made her feel seen in a way she hadn't before. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. Johnny reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and comforting. "No, thank you," he replied. "You've reminded me why I do what I do. Stories like yours, they're what keep me going." For a moment, the two of them stood there, connected by a shared understanding that transcended fame or celebrity. It was a moment of pure humanity, raw and unfiltered. The girl felt a sense of relief wash over her, as if a weight she had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. And Johnny, though he had heard countless stories from fans over the years, felt a renewed sense of purpose. As the young girl finished sharing her story, there was a moment of silence between them, a silence filled with understanding, empathy, and unspoken emotions. Johnny Depp, known for his ability to embody complex characters on screen, now showed a different kind of depth, his ability to connect with people on a human level. He looked at her, his eyes soft and filled with gratitude, and broke the silence with words that would stay with her forever. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Thank you for trusting me with your story. It takes a lot of courage to open up like that, and I want you to know how much it means to me." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that resonated deeply with the girl. She had spent so long feeling invisible, but in that moment, she felt seen, truly seen. Johnny paused, as if choosing his next word carefully. He wanted to say something that would matter, something that would stay with her long after this encounter was over. "You know," he began, his tone thoughtful, "life is a funny way of testing us. It throws things at us that we don't think we can handle. But here's the thing, you've already proven how strong you are. You've faced things that would break most people, and you're still standing. That's not luck, that's you." The girl's eyes widened as she listened, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and disbelief. She had never thought of herself as strong. To her, she had just been surviving, doing whatever she could to get through each day. But hearing Johnny say those words made her realize that maybe, just maybe, she was stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. Johnny continued, his voice gentle but firm. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you don't belong," he said. "The world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs people who stand out, who dare to be different. And from what I can see, you're one of those people." The girl felt a lump form in her throat, her eyes welling up with tears once again. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness or pain. They were tears of relief, of validation. For so long, she had felt like an outsider, like she didn't have a place in the world. But now, standing there with Johnny Depp, hearing him say those words, she felt like she belonged, not just to the world, but to herself. Johnny noticed her tears and gave her a warm, understanding smile. "Hey," he said softly, "it's okay to feel things. That's what makes us human." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small handkerchief, handing it to her with a playful grin. "Hey, I always carry one of these. You never know when you'll need it." The girl laughed softly, the sound light and genuine as she took the handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for everything." Johnny nodded, his expression kind and sincere. "You're welcome," he replied. Then, as if remembering something, he reached into his bag and pulled out a pen. "Do you have something I can sign for you?" he asked, his tone casual but thoughtful. The girl's eyes lit up, and she quickly handed him the notebook she had been clutching so tightly. Johnny flipped it open to a blank page and began to write. But he didn't just sign his name. He added a short message, something personal and meaningful. When he handed the notebook back to her, she looked down and read the words, "Stay unique. The world needs your light. Johnny Depp." Her breath caught in her throat as she read the message, her hands trembling slightly. It was more than she had ever hoped for, more than she had ever dreamed. She looked up at Johnny, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll never forget this." Johnny smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Neither will I," he replied. Then, without hesitation, he opened his arms and gave her a gentle hug. It wasn't a grand, dramatic gesture. It was simple, warm, and heartfelt. The girl froze for a moment, surprised by the gesture, but then she melted into the hug, feeling a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in a long time. When they pulled away, the girl was beaming, her smile brighter than the city lights around them. She couldn't believe this was real, that Johnny Depp, her idol, had not only listened to her story but had also given her words of encouragement, a personal message, and even a hug. It was more than she had ever imagined. Johnny gave her one last smile before stepping back. "Take care of yourself," he said, his tone warm and fatherly. "And remember, you're stronger than you think." The girl nodded, her heart full. "I will," she promised. "Thank you for everything." As Johnny Depp walked away from the restaurant that night, he carried with him more than just a memory of a kind encounter. He carried a reminder of why he had chosen this path in the first place. For decades, he had poured his heart into his craft, creating characters that resonated with people around the world. But in the hustle of Hollywood, with its endless demands and pressures, it was easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. Tonight, however, that bigger picture had come into sharp focus. The young girl's story had touched him in a way he hadn't expected. Her vulnerability, her courage, and her gratitude had reminded him of the power of storytelling. It wasn't just about entertaining people, winning awards. It was about making a difference, even in the smallest ways. As he got into his car and drove off into the night, he found himself reflecting on her words. "Your movies gave me hope." Those 5 words echoed in his mind, a testament to the impact his work had on people's lives. It was a humbling thought, one that reignited his passion for what he did. For Johnny, this encounter was more than just a fleeting moment. It was a reaffirmation of his purpose. It reminded him that, no matter how chaotic or demanding his career became, there was a reason he kept going. It wasn't for the fame or the accolades. It was for the people like her, the ones who found solace, inspiration, or even just a moment of escape in his wake. As he drove through the city, the lights blurring past him, he felt a renewed sense of gratitude for the journey he was on. Meanwhile, the young girl stood outside the restaurant, clutching her notebook tightly to her chest. She felt like she was floating, her heart still racing from the encounter. It was surreal to think that just a moment ago, she had been face to face with Johnny Depp, not just as a fan meeting her idol, but as one human connecting with another. His word played over and over in her mind: stay unique. The world needs your light. It was a message she knew she would carry with her for the rest of her life. As she walked home, the city seemed different somehow, brighter, more alive. The streets that had once felt intimidating now felt full of possibility. She thought about everything she had been through, the bullying, the loneliness, the moments when she had felt like giving up. But now, those struggles felt like stepping stones rather than roadblocks. They had led her to this moment, to this feeling of hope and empowerment she hadn't known was possible. When she got home, she immediately went to her room and opened her notebook, carefully unfolding the letter she had given to Johnny. She read it again, her eyes lingering on the words she had written. "Thank you for helping me find the courage to be myself." It was a sentiment she had poured her heart into, and now, knowing that he had read it, she felt a sense of closure. She had said what she needed to say, and he had listened. That alone was a gift she would treasure forever. The next day, she woke up feeling different, lighter, more confident. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled, something she hadn't done in a long time. Johnny's words echoed in her mind: "You're stronger than you think." For the first time, she believed it. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was ready to face it, not as someone trying to fit in, but as someone embracing her uniqueness. As the days turned into weeks, the encounter continued to ripple through her life. She found herself standing up a little taller, speaking a little louder, and embracing the things that made her different. She even started writing more, pouring her thoughts and feelings into stories and poems. It was as if Johnny's encouragement had unlocked something inside her, a belief in herself that had been buried under years of self-doubt. For both Johnny and the girl, that night outside the restaurant became a defining moment. For Johnny, it was a reminder of the impact his work could have, a reminder to never lose sight of the human connection at the heart of storytelling. For the girl, it was a turning point, a moment that gave her the courage to embrace who she was and step into the world with confidence. Sometimes, the smallest moments can leave the biggest impact. A few minutes of kindness, a few words of encouragement, a simple gesture, these are the things that can change lives. And in the case of Johnny Depp and the young girl, it was a moment neither of them would ever forget. What would you say to your idol if you met them? Would you share a personal story, ask for advice, or simply say thank you? Let us know in the comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Stories like this remind us of the power of kindness and the impact one moment can have on someone's life. And if you're new here, welcome to StorySpot. We're all about bringing you the most touching, surprising, and inspiring stories from around the world. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest uploads. There's always more heartwarming content on the way. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the smallest moments can leave the biggest impact. See you in the next video.